Jesus Christ the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And we would agree. And yet, he's not the same. Not the same. The Jesus who sat under a fig tree and talked to his disciples and munched figs will not yet be fully king of the universe until the end of the age. And so the church always has had this problem with Christology. How do you see Jesus? You see him as the glorious Christ, the King of the universe, which is the term that is used to describe him in the Feast of Christ the King, the solemnity. King of the universe. And there's a great possibility there's more than one universe. But his theory is that we live inside a black hole, and that there are others. And so there may be life elsewhere. That's not somebody's wild speculation. It's pretty well based. They may prove it. He's king of all that. So how do you look at someone like that as your dearest friend? I mean, so Christology is a problem for the church. There's high Christology and low Christology. When I went to Bishop Olmsted and asked for him to advise me on a spiritual director, he sent me to California, to the Benedictines. And I went to the Benedictine that was assigned to me, and he said, well, where are you with Christ? And I told him, he said, your Christology is way too high. You need to think of Jesus the man. That was his advice. That was the whole trip, that was the bottom line. So this is a reality. Different souls need a cosmic king, and other souls need him to be their best friend. And everything in between, they're not the same. So what I'm suggesting this morning is that you come with me back to Nazareth, back to a fig tree, and for a moment sit under it with him. Just you and him. You just think about that for a moment. Not the cosmic Christ. I mean, he is, but in that moment you need him to be with you personally and not all over the universe. Does that make sense? Okay. And so you have a question for him. And he's very open. He has this look on his face that says, ask me anything. I'll tell you. Well, Lord, your kingdom, I mean, I know that it's here, but not yet, that it's a work in progress. I know that it's something inside me, but I also know it's something that embraces the entire universe and beyond. How do I enter it? What do you expect of me? How do I get in? Remember, there's no church yet. There's no sacrament of baptism. Nothing exists but him and you and his words. You can't jump ahead. Stay back there in that moment. And once I'm in your kingdom, how do I help bring it about? In other words, what's my work? What do I do? What do I become? In order that your kingdom in this world can be manifest, so that it can show up. And not just show up, but come to completion. Because I'm one of your disciples, I need to help you build your kingdom. And remember, there's no church yet to tell you. I see him leaning forward for emphasis. This is important. I see him leaning forward and saying, if you want to be a citizen in my kingdom, you have to put away a great many ideas. You have to surrender some freedoms to be a member of my kingdom. Does that bother you? Well, it depends on what freedoms you're asking me to give up. I've given up sugar, but I haven't given up chocolate. we have our reservations about what we're willing to give up. Well, I'm not going to ask you to give up something that will hurt you. I'm going to ask you to give up things that will make you citizens in my kingdom and will attract others and will actually help build it. Okay, what? Humble yourself. Well, but I'm humble. Oh, I mean humble yourself. I mean become like a child. Well, how can I run my business if I become like a child? It's dog eat dog out there. I know that. But humble yourself. Because if you don't humble yourself, you can't accept the things that I'm going to tell you. You won't. You'll want to correct them. You'll want to massage them. And I'm telling you the answer to your question, how do I live in your kingdom? How do I get in it? How do I live in it? You need to humble yourself. You need to stay extremely small in your own eyes. Even if the world applauds you and thinks you're the greatest citizen on the planet, you have to stay small. If you don't, you can't help me the way I need help in building my kingdom. Okay, so I'm going to humble myself. What will that do? It will help you unload pride. Because as long as you're not humble, you've got a load of pride on your back and a rope around it that you're hanging on to try to keep it all there in place. And it will wear you out. Well, that makes sense. Okay. So if I humble myself, I'm not constantly defending my honor. And, okay, I think I can do that. What else? Well, you have to love. You will have to love. That will have to be the first priority, really. But you have to humble yourself in order to love God and your neighbor. Because your normal tendency is to love yourself first. And then God, and last your neighbor, if he's good. And if he isn't, then you kind of put him on the back burner and wait until he's better, and then you'll love your neighbor. And you go to God, make them better so I can love them. And of course that's not exactly what it is, not yet. And then he takes out a list, says, well, there's more. If somebody asks you to forgive them, and they've caused you grief beyond measure, but they say, please forgive me, you have to. You can't reserve forgiveness. You have to. Otherwise, you can't really live in my kingdom, because that's what we do there. And that's what witnesses to the world that we do that. And that builds my kingdom. And it expands it. My rule, my reign in hearts. Well, what if they don't ask? Well, then you have to be heroic and forgive them anyway. But I don't want to do that. Well, then you don't want to live in my kingdom. Just that simple. When I was on the cross, and I looked down at the ones jeering at me and wanting me to die right now, I said, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. So I'm not asking you to do something I haven't done. If you want to live in my kingdom, you need to be thinking heroics. Simple. But in some cases, your forgiveness is going to be heroic. If you don't, you're going to carry this thing on your back, and you won't get rid of it. It'll still be there when you die. You'll be dragging it behind you, unwilling to let go. If you want to live in my kingdom, you have to, this is the law of the kingdom. What else? Well, stop judging. But I have to evaluate and assess things in my life. Yes, you do. But you don't have to judge. Just because you see something that is contradictory doesn't mean you have to open your mouth and say anything. If you go to the zoo and you look in the tiger cage and see a beautiful tiger, it doesn't mean you have to get in there with it, does it? No. All right? You can see something that's contradictory, but you don't have to say it. You don't have to go there. You don't have to join with it in some kind of relationship. That's how you live in my kingdom. And others will see that, and that will charm their heart. And they might think about joining my kingdom. But if you're judging everybody and everything, why would they want to? Because they're next. They know they're next. You have to remember the poor. Well, the government remembers the poor and they take plenty out of my check to take care of the poor. No. You need to remember the poor. You yourself need to remember the poor. He constantly talked about almsgiving, didn't he? And especially the one in front of you. The poor in front of you. Well, that one's not so bad. I think I can give a percentage of my kingdom, of my money to the kingdom by giving it to the poor. Okay, you're investing. When you invest for yourself, is that how much you give? Oh no, I give a lot more. When I invest for myself, I give a lot more. Well, maybe it's time to be heroic again. And then the last one, he said you have to be meek. Well, what do you mean by meek? I think I'm meek. No, meek means you never get angry. If you feel anger rising, you stuff your fist in your mouth and you walk into the other room and you scream there, not at somebody, and you get it out of your system and you walk back in and smile and try to love your neighbor. Oh boy. Well, meek isn't so easy, but in Isaiah's reading, it says that Jesus is meek. That he won't take a reed that's already bruised and snap it. That he won't take a little flickering, barely lit wick on an oil lamp and snuff it out. Very meek, very gentle. Those are the rules of the kingdom. And if we go to the Lord of the universe, you don't see them. You see the glory and the grandeur of Christ reigning over creation. Someday, totally, in a new heaven and a new earth. I want to sit on your right and on your left. I want to be part of the power. Wait a minute. We talked about that another time, didn't we? So to be a disciple means to listen to him and then to try very hard to do what he says. And I just gave you what I know in my heart of hearts he would say to you under that tree. I know that's what he would say. The church adds a great deal to that as it develops. You go back to the roots, and that's where they are. So as Carmelite souls, we need to pay attention to that. I want to invite you to our Lenten mission early. That's a long way off. But Father Philip Krill, who wrote the book on the Trinity, has accepted our invitation. He's going to be giving 3 conferences. The 25th of March, which is the Feast of the Annunciation, and the next 2 days, 25, 26, and 27 at St. Maria Goretti. And he's speaking, he came up with the title. I didn't try to engineer it. And so he said he would like to speak on life in the Trinity through the mystery of Mary. That ought to be wonderful. So if you are interested in Father Krill, set those days aside and pray for him for this mission.